There is a fifth dimension.
A dimension of sound.
Damn it, Frank! We tell him to be quiet. I spilled my hot cup of Uranus again.
A dimension of sight.
Hey, Arch. I'm gonna sock you in the puss.
A dimension of mind.
Nan Adams, is that you?
Next stop, the Twilight Zone.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the Fifth Dimension of Twilight Zone podcast. Of course, I am your host, Nick. We're here, of course, to talk to the Twilight Zone, Rod Serling's well-respected, beloved, TV series that came out in the 60s. As of we're recording this, why this is that day, I have no idea, but apparently this is National Twilight Zone Day. It could have been July 4th or January 1st. Had to be May 11th. I figured that would be like a Star Wars Day or something like that, but no. Happy Twilight Zone Day, people. Yeah.
Yay. Celebrating in your own traditions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're recording an episode in observance of that.
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing. We're not just doing a weekly. It's not a weekly thing anymore, people. It's a national celebration of podcasting of the Twilight Zone. There should be no more podcasts because we're doing a special celebration of it. But anyways, right. But anyways, we're on audio feeds, Anchor, SoundCloud, Bootsy Collins, iTunes. I don't know.
Cloris Leachman.
What was it? Patsy Cline, whatever the dude wanted to listen to, he couldn't listen to.
Oh, Perry Como.
Perry Como, yes. Yeah. Well, so anyways, we're on those audio feeds.
Three-headed beavers.
Redhead beavers, vibrators, whatever you want to call it. We're on those podcast feeds. But as we do, we're gonna that right.
Very nice lady, by the way. I met her before. She's very nice.
Wait, who is this again?
Dolly Parton.
Oh, Dolly Parton. Yeah, I heard she's a really nice person.
She came into one of my restaurants.
Aw.
Nice.
She's a really most genuine, famous person I've ever met.
That's cool. And you've met your fair share.
And I did meet quite a few, but she was definitely she was the real deal. She was straight up. Yeah.
What were we talking about again? What is this? Wait, what?
We're
talking Twilight Zone. Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
because it is Twilight Zone Day nationally.
That's right. So that's why we talk about the Joker and Dolly Parton. All that
absolutely.
Stuff, so.
Yeah.
Anyways, as you can see, I have my usual co-hosts here, Jacob and Triv. How the hell are you guys? I should explain for real quick before they start talking, because of course I want to introduce them, but I want to go into a diatribe. I tried posting that fucking video with Raymond, and I feel really bad because I couldn't get that shit to upload. Have you guys had this problem before where you upload a video, it takes forever
to process,
and then it doesn't work?
Nope. It's been a while, but I had it happen when I used to do my show. Well, no, it was before that show. It was when I used to do my old podcast. It happened. Actually, it rolled all the way up because I used to premiere that. It rolled all the way up to the premiere and it was still going. I was like, well, it's been processing for like 15 hours. I'm sure it's gonna go. Nope. Ran up on the premiere and there was like, man, it was like a lot of people too for my show. It was like 20 people in there waiting on it and it never started. And I was like,
no.
Sorry.
So I just consider it karma, Nick, for you trying to take over my theater space.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have the deed and everything for it. So
I'd like to see this apparent deed.
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, how you guys doing? Last week's episode was pretty awesome. I think it was one of our better episodes because we actually found an episode that we liked. So it was kind of nice.
Yeah.
But
and Raymond was way cool. So
Yeah. I talked to him. He's like real thankful about coming on, which, like I said, we're a small podcast, so anybody comes on to our podcast is just okay.
Absolutely, we love everybody.
We are the biggest Twilight Zone podcast featuring 3 people being named Nick, Jake, and Triv.
Right.
That's quite the call to fame. I'll tell you what.
The number 1 podcast in that.
That's right.
Niche.
I mean, right. I mean, you gotta be careful. We gotta think happy thoughts anyways. So,
what? Screw that. I'm wishing you all into the cornfield.
I'm gonna turn one of you guys into a Jack in the Box.
I'd like to see you try, bastard.
Very bad girl.
Oh, baby.
You
guys need a moment.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Jacob gonna disappear. No, I'm just anyway, so what were we talking about?
I'm in the
Twilight Zone.
cornfield.
How is the
You
cornfield?
should have exploded first. That'd been funny.
Oh.
Exactly. So we
Damn
got ornithologists and Jacob disappearing into the ether as he explodes.
But why a cassowary? I don't understand. Yeah.
Why is he like Chicken Boo from Animaniacs?
Because Chicken Boo is awesome.
Maybe.
Is that Chicken Boo? Is that where Chocoboos came from Final Fantasy?
I don't think so.
From the Animaniacs? That would be awesome if that was true. If like that's where they got their
Chocoboos are
inspiration.
older than Animaniacs, but I could be wrong.
Oh yeah, probably.
Well, I mean, what came first, the Chicken Boo or the
Chocoboo or
the
Chickaboo?
Chocoboo?
Chocoboo. Which one was it?
Exactly.
Sounds like a beginning of a racist joke.
Boo chickaboo, chickaboo, woo boo chickaboo, chickaboo.
Chickaboo and a Chocoboo walk into a bar.
Anyway.
Somebody is listening to this in their car going, okay, what else is on?
Well, I put it this way: if there's 73, what are we 73 episodes in now? If they're like 73 episodes into this podcast, and this is what turns it off, I just don't understand you.
We've done worse.
Oh, we've done way worse.
We used to be a clean podcast until Triv came on, you know.
That was like episode one.
Episode.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We're never clean, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Us doing the whole Beavis and Butthead thing during Mr. Beavis. If that didn't put people off, I think we're okay.
Yeah, I'll go with that. We'll go with that. Anyways,
Big, yeah.
So we're here.
Fire.
We
Rod
are.
Serling,
Yeah.
Cornfields.
Cornfield.
I'm
yeah.
just trying to
Cornfield, yeah.
postpone this opening narration.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming real soon.
That's what
I'm
she
telling you
said.
That's
yeah.
coming,
Chris.
Right.
coming real soon.
Yeah.
Jacob's coming to your city.
Or
So,
all-
anyways, at this point, everybody's like, "Fuck this," and
is this
listen to
podcast
like
about?
whatever rival podcast. So, the episode we are talking about today is considered one of the classic episodes of the Twilight Zone. One of the darkest episodes of the Twilight Zone. Makes me not want to have kids because I'm afraid of psychic powers. This is maybe where Stephen King got his inspiration for Firestarter. I'm not entirely sure. I think it is. I think if I remember right, he got inspiration for this episode. Anyways, someone got inspiration probably for this and had kids, and that's where the world is shit right now. But anyways,
Oh, sure. Blame the kids. I mean,
I'm blaming
not?
all kids. Have you not watched a horror film? Every horror film has kids in it, and they're all fucking evil.
yeah, and horror films also have adults in them too.
Yeah, but have you watched Children of the Corn? Trey?
I have.
Have
the
you watched the
2023
Omen?
one?
No.
Yeah. Speaking of the devil incarnate, I haven't watched it, but I
That
know.
was true horror.
Yeah.
You make
Yeah.
it's truly horrible.
With that said, as you can tell, we're talking about season 3, episode 8, which is called "It's a Good Life." Directed by James Sheldon, written by Rod Serling, based
a
off
good
the.
life after all. It's a
Not
good
for this
life
family.
After all, it's a good life. After all, it's a good life.
And that is the rendition of Triv's "It's a Small World," and I want to kill myself now. Anyways, this is based off a story from Jerome Bixby. Same title. Production code 4801. Air date November 3rd, 1961. Of course, this stars Bill Mumy as Anthony Fremont, Cloris Leachman, John Larch, Max Showalter, Alice Frost, Jeanne Bates, and some other people. So there's a lot.
Number
There's
7, the Larch. Number 7, the Larch.
Bill Mumy still acting till this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't he like one of those child stars that you see on VH1 or something like that?
Possibly.
Or like the stuff he got later on wasn't as successful as like this.
Well, when I heard his name, I was like, that name's really familiar. What do I know him from? So I started looking and I went down a rabbit hole.
Oh shit.
And I was there things he's in, but none of it was like, oh, that's the one, you know, like when you're looking for, when you hear somebody's name or see him and you're like, I've seen them somewhere before. I've heard of them or whatever. And you get to looking and like, you'll come across something like a movie you're like familiar with, but you're like, no, that's not it. That's not what I know him from. And I couldn't figure it out. And I still never did figure it out. However, I did see that he was in a movie called Double Trouble. that featured the Barbarian Barbarian brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with them from the 80s.
Oh, I thought you were just saying the Olsen twins or the Barbarian twins or something.
No, the Barbarian brothers, the thespians, 80s thespians. Now, where I am, and I'm familiar with Double Trouble. I think their names are Peter and David Paul. They're these big muscular guys, and they're twins. I think they're twins. They look alike, so I'm gonna go with twins. But like they were in a movie that till this day I love, and it is fucking terrible, but nobody ever knows it. And it's called Think Big. Bill Mummy's not in it, but they're in it, and he was in a movie with them. I strongly recommend anybody check out Think Big. Came out in 1990, directed by John Turteltaub.
Oh, nice.
The director of National Treasure and fucking The Kid.
Yeah, and
fucking The Kid. Okay, well, first off,
it has David Carradine's in it, Martin Mull's in it, a bunch of other people that you've seen, don't know their names though, probably. They're in it, but it has an epic theme song. I just remember from a kid. It just goes, "Think big."
Yeah.
Nice.
Think big. They're truck drivers. I mean, I never said it was a tour de force.
Okay.
I loved it when I was a kid. Came out in 1990. I would have been 10 or 11.
Nice.
Good.
I was gonna say Bill Mumy was in the Lost in Space. He was Will,
he was
what's his nuts? Yeah.
That's what I did see that. That's what I know him from is Lost in.
He's also a main character in Babylon 5.
Really?
Yeah.
I think he's more popular with his TV work than his films. His films, he was in some big movies, but I don't think he had predominant roles. So he was in the 1990 Captain America movie.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I remember renting that thinking, oh, this is going to be awesome. It wasn't.
Hey, it's the best Captain America we had before 2012.
It's not the only, actually. There's another one where he rides around, looked like Evil Knievel. But yeah, it was better than that one. I'll give you that.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
He was also, they did a follow-up to this in the 2000s when they did Twilight Zone. And it was the longest record between the television episode and its sequel. It was like 41 years and some odd months.
Oh, they actually did like not a remake, but a follow-up?
Yeah, his daughter. He has a daughter that has psychic abilities.
Which, who's going to bang that?
Yeah. I like that we both went there at the same time.
Genuinely, though. Like,
but I mean, I guess as he got older, he got, hormones and all that. And I mean, it wouldn't be hard when you can make people do whatever the hell you want.
Oh, dude, can you imagine their sex?
Lay down.
Yes, Anthony, that was good. You're not smiling. Why aren't you wet? Oh, yes.
Why are you crying? Why are you crying after sex? Why don't you want a cigarette?
Wish her to the cornfield.
Exactly.
Yeah. A lot of corn. Trev, is this episode set in Iowa?
No, it's set in Ohio. They say it off the start.
It must mean it's a good
Freaking
episode then.
Degenerates.
Yes. Actually, it's ironic that there's a lot of horror properties set in Ohio, like Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, I don't get it. I don't get what's so exciting about Ohio. There's nothing.
That's the thing. It's not exciting. That's why horror
your
movies
lead
there.
Hey, we have Bob Evans in White Castle.
And
Cedar
so does
Point.
Chicago.
So do we.
Yes.
Anyways, we're going off on tangents. I need to bring us back on track.
Okay.
Stay on target.
So back on target. Yes. So It's a Good Life is once again a well-regarded, well-beloved episode. We'll discuss because we have a different feeling of taste when it comes to the Twilight Zone. Thanks to Jacob now like pointing us in an interesting direction of how episodes play out, which I appreciate because it allows us to find episodes that we wouldn't normally watch and wouldn't normally like. So anyways,
that and there's a Think Big connection. So I mean,
is there? Yeah. We always got Jacob for the strange trivia. Trev's always the trivia of like good knowledge. Jacob is just hey, you remember that movie?
She has trivia that makes sense.
Well, it's not really.
I have trivia that I'm like, hey guys, guess what? I went down a rabbit hole and found this movie.
Hey,
four ways removed from this other totally unrelated thing.
So it's like the Kevin Bacon. We're like the Kevin Bacon of
Yeah.
Twilight or podcast. You mean?
Exactly.
No, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say we all remember this episode for the most part. This is a memorable episode. I mean, am I wrong?
Think it'd be hard pressed not to, even if you didn't remember like the ins and outs of this episode, you've seen it somewhere in pop culture. It's like Star Wars or anything else. You may not be familiar with the base property, but some part of it will have hit you along in the cultural zeitgeist.
I remember very vaguely as it started with the little boy and all that, Bill Mumy. I was like, okay, yeah, I remember I have watched this. I
Yeah.
remember more the movies version of this.
Right, right. Um,
I remember that one vividly.
Yeah, because I was telling Trip before you came on, Jacob. I actually prefer that version more than I prefer this one, just because of the Looney Tunes style nature and the Joe Dante style weirdness. That's just me. It doesn't make this a bad episode. I appreciate that one more because it's more visceral to me
and
personally.
it could
That's just
show
me.
more. And the end, which we'll get to, and I'm not gonna spoil. Not that I need total closure, but let's be real, you don't get a tremendous amount. I was surprised by that. That surprised me about this one. The closure or like thereof in the episode is kind of like, oh, okay. And it's even part of the closing narration too of yeah, hey.
Well, that
Purgatory,
Yeah,
man.
right.
It's basically purgatory.
this is life. You're like,
right.
well, shit, we're not getting any kind of okay.
Nope.
Well, I actually got to ask you guys that question. Is there any meaning behind this episode? Like we always find like a thing that this episode is or the episode is presenting, like whether fear or hysteria. Do you think this is an episode that has don't have kids because they will turn out evil? Or
honestly,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you guys have any ideas?
Honestly, watching this one, and especially, and maybe it's more of the modern perspective as compared to a 1960s perspective, or maybe it's more so then. But you look at the fact that Anthony was never told no. And I think you could play that as, this is what happens when you, when you spoil your kids. Like I could see that kind of taking it sort of.
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, no, I was gonna say, working at convenience stores and working at places where kids go to movie theaters, you see it stuff like this where the kids will start yelling and screaming. And I know, Jacob, I'm sure you've had to deal with this too, as having multiple kids where you have to put them in their place because they are acting a fool, as just acting stupid. And these people, as we'll learn, refuse to do that. But then again, they have it all like an ulterior motive and stuff like that. So,
well, and how many people before them tried and learned the consequences of dealing with an all-powerful kid?
I honestly, as watching it, I was kind of just watching it face value, and I was probably I was doing more comparing of this one to the one I am most familiar with from the movie. But yeah, as soon as you said that about kids never being told no, I was like, yep, that's the parallel here.
yeah,
or it sure seems to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a heightened, obviously fanciful version of that, but definitely that's what it is.
And I don't know what the 60s like. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, we have a slightly different perspective on this compared to what you would have seen in the 60s. As far as like that would have been like that's that one yuppie couple that, they prescribe to, Dr. Spock or whatever kind of a thing, as far as raising their kids. But I do wonder, like, and I've not, like, this was based off of a short story, which I didn't look up, but I do wonder, like, how it was perceived at that time. Like if it was a spoiled kid thing or if it was something else that they saw.
I mean, it could be the fear. It could be also, as I look in the book, it could also be a kind of like the fears of a parent not being able to handle a child, maybe a little bit.
I could see that.
I'm not saying like every parent is like that, but every parent, I don't know, Jacob, you're the one that has kids in this podcast. Did you, when you first had your first kid, did you like fear that you weren't going to be a good father?
I was 20. It's kind of young and dumb.
It's okay.
I mean, I guess, yeah, sure, a little bit. But for me, I mean, I won't, and I guess everybody's different. It happened, and then it was like, I think leading up to it, yeah, I was like, oh shit, I'm about to have a child. I'm about to have a human being I made that I'm responsible for. Now, 20 years old, almost, I was about to be 21. And then it happens, and it's kind of like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And I just kind of did it. So I didn't really give it much thought after that. I
Right.
thought about it later in life. Did I do the right thing? Did I make the right decisions? So I think that, yeah, sure. As a parent, you're always going to question that, especially as your
Yeah.
kids do dumbass things.
It's every kid.
Yeah. You wonder, did I do something to lead them to that?
Right. No, that's fair. I had another thought too, and
There's a lot of
I
shit
don't
in
know
this.
if you look at them as like, because you think about like the understanding that a kid has, like he's like, oh, I made a monster, or, oh, I made a 3-headed gopher or whatever, like a kid's imagination running wild. And I wonder too, like, because we don't really, like you said, we don't, the way it ends is very different, and maybe this is something more for down the way, but do you think you could actually have, like, because everybody that does quote wrong or quote outside the box stuff gets their karma either for good or for bad. How would you do that, like, at that time and place? I don't think you can do that with a kid. You couldn't say, well, this kid got bitch slapped because he wished away all these people and turned the you know animals into crazy creatures and stuff. Like, you can't, that there's things you couldn't do in TV back in that time. Like any kind of retribution on that kid. Well, you can't say that though, because the one kid from the episode with the grandma who died, like, he tried to kill himself.
Yeah.
Not meaning to, but
I don't even think that that's because, like, you really got me to thinking with the whole, like, telling the kid, don't tell your kids no thing. Because I feel pretty strongly about that, like, discipline of children. I've seen how in our society it's been declining as far as, like, people are afraid to discipline their kids nowadays.
Right.
And rightfully so to some degrees. And I mean, there's a difference in discipline and, abuse. But that line, I don't think the line has changed, but I think the perception and people are scared that they're going to be accused of that, and God knows what'll happen. But and because of that, kids aren't being disciplined properly. I'm not even talking about beating the shit out of your kid. I'm just disciplined, not telling kids no. And last generation, it got real bad, and now that generation's having kids, and we're seeing that a lot more. Kind of lost my train of thought. Don't know where I was going with that, but but I do think, especially from back then in the 60s, man. I mean, yeah, I feel like they would discipline kids, and they would, like, I think this was not really, I know where I was going. I don't think this episode was really trying to show, like, a complete story as far as, like, hey, if you have a kid that's not been disciplined and, never told no and gets whatever they want, they turn into an unholy terror. It wanted to show that. It didn't want to show, hey, here is a kid who's never been told no and he's an unholy terror. We've all known one, and he's going to get his comeuppance. It's not that. It's
right.
When you do that, I think it's trying to show you that when that happens, it's really hard to get that turned around, and that just might be what it is. That's the future. That's what the kid's not going to change. Because I've known a lot of kids that are like that. They're it's really hard to turn that kind of stuff around. Not impossible, but it is hard for people. Most people don't do it, and those kids go off to be not great human beings. And,
I see it all the time. I
hate to talk about kids, but let's be real. Kids are just future adults. And
That's true.
We won't have a problem calling that adult an asshole. So you know what, kid, you're an asshole.
And they turned out to be, what's his face?
And it's lots of
Dennis Leary.
Dennis. Oh yeah.
Well, no, actually, I was looking at what you guys were talking. I was looking at the book. Apparently, Rod Serling wrote the script before buying the IP for this, which is interesting because usually it's the opposite. You buy the IP and then you write the story. And this was the first.
Might be wasting time and work.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right. Which I know some people who do that, waste time and work when it comes to writing. But it was the first script written for the season, which I found interesting. And apparently the writer, the companion, also wrote for Sliders, which I thought was kind of interesting too.
Oh,
the show Sliders?
Yeah, the show Sliders. But he apparently interviewed Bill Mumy about it, talking about his history with, like, the show and how how it affected him and stuff like that as a kid. And it's interesting. Like, there are some points, like the companion. I don't know how you feel about the companionship, but I think sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad when it comes to like there's not enough information. This book should be like 1,000 pages long. It feels like a dummy's guide almost.
I would agree. I think that it definitely, but it's one of those things too, where, like, to be able to write something like that, yeah, there's going to be a certain level of interest, but
Right.
how far do you go in? You know,
Well,
Like,
I mean,
I find with some of those things, I don't have this
Yeah.
book you guys are talking about, but I know what type of book it is, and I've had books like that are kind of like all encompassing of things like this. Sometimes there's just not as much information about certain things, and I
That
feel
is
like
true.
they do just pad it out in some places. I don't know if that's what you guys are talking about, but like kind
yeah,
of like
yeah,
they
yeah.
don't want to just have like this big long like Wikipedia diatribe of like of this one episode, and then the next one's like one sentence. Here's a blurb of what it's about, and then move on. So they do try and like throw as much as they can in there. So
well,
I
the other
think it's
thing is too
it's in
that
earnest.
retrospectively, because this was written, I don't have it in front of me. Like, say it was written in 2010, you can still go back and like ask people about the things that happened previously. But sometimes those stories, especially for the episodes that were, you know, more run of the mill, there may just not be that much to tell outside of the norm of the thing. I mean, yeah, you could
it's-
say there
it's
could be more
2018.
about, yeah, you could say more about like, oh, you know, this was the basis for the story for this, you know, this, that, the other thing, you know, this actor did this, that actor did that. But I don't know. I feel like there's so much online that you have to kind of keep it, even in 2018, you know, people's attention spans were what they were. And a lot of that information that's basic. I mean, how much of the information like that you could find on, you know, Wikipedia or IMDb, you know? So it is
Yeah, I
kind of
think-
balancing those two things.
I think they should just write word for word what we say because we're always correct on the
Oh,
information we
absolutely.
provide.
Like,
Absolutely.
number one.
Yeah, I
Number
never,
one
I never
Twilight
read from
Three
Wikipedia
people.
ever.
Drew, Jake, and
Yeah.
Nick. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
it's
'Cause
tough
I
being
will
at the top.
Exactly.
Good to
It
be the
is
king,
lonely.
but you know.
We're like in the tower of the perchance to dream episode.
Yeah, we have the fever. I'm telling you. Oh, we need some cowbell.
Fever for more
Oof.
cowbell.
Oof.
That's
yeah.
right.
Amen.
With that said, we are like the last episode, 25 minutes in before we actually start the episode. I'm not joking. When I was looking today, when Jacob actually read the opening narration, it was 25 minutes into the episode. It was
Wow.
great. But no, anyways, so like I said, as Raymond alluded to, there's always those episodes you would see like the 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock hour during the marathons. And this is always one of those episodes. This is the
Oh, yeah.
prime time episode. This is the episode like the Monster Do on Maple Street or the Invaders or the Trash Can episode or any of those episodes that will
Edit.
pop up.
Alex, if you're listening, it is a trash can episode, though.
It's not a trash can.
It's not a trash can.
It's not a freaking
Not a
trash can.
It's not a tumor.
It's
not
the
a tumor,
garbage
it's a
pail.
trash can.
It's a garbage pail kid
Shut
station.
up. But this episode is one of those episodes that I enjoy. I don't know if it's a top 10 episode for me, but I enjoy it because it's different. It's
Very.
Twilight Zone. It's classic Twilight Zone. But we'll talk about where we rank this when the we get to that part of the episode. Jacob,
Yeah.
we have the Twilight Zone opening, and then we have the diatribe that is actually, if both of them are actually quite good, to be fairly honest. I'm pretty sure when people watched this episode in 1961 or whenever this episode aired, 1961, I'm pretty sure they weren't expecting a kid to be the monster. So that's why that's why this opening is so amazing. Like the opening narration, as long as it is, it's pretty fun, even though it's long. So
Absolutely.
Jacob, have at it.
I will also
This
say
is
real
a-
quick that the fact
Oh,
that
please, go ahead.
Rod Serling comes on, I'm not gonna take that much time, but the way that
No,
Rod
take all
Serling
the time
comes
you
on,
Because I'm gonna take a lot.
yeah, absolutely.
He
The
sounds
way
like he's a
comes-
general preparing for war or some shit.
Well, he kind of is. I mean, he's preparing for a war on like 2 pages of dialogue. No, I'm just gonna say that like I love the way that he says, you know, this episode is outside the box. It's a different episode. It requires a different kind of open. Like I love how he kind of builds the anticipation for it and kind of gets your like, oh, what's going on kind of a thing going.
The
His,
Patient.
anticipation. I just used that, by the way, in my new video that comes out tomorrow.
Nice.
Please tell me you were wearing a corset.
Oh
And
no,
fishnets.
it's in voiceover, but I
Fishnet.
do show
Damn
Tim
it.
Curry in it doing his. So, all right, here we go. Diaphragm. Tonight's story on the Twilight Zone is somewhat unique and calls for a different kind of introduction. This, as you may recognize, is a map of the United States. And there's a little town there called Peaksville. On a given morning, not too long ago, the rest of the world disappeared and Peaksville was left all alone. Its inhabitants were never sure whether the world was destroyed and only Peaksville left untouched, or whether the village had somehow been taken away. They were, on the other hand, sure of one thing: the cause. A monster had arrived in the village.
Yes.
Just by using his mind, he took away the automobiles, the electricity, the machines, because they displeased him. And he moved an entire community back into the Dark Ages just by using his mind. Now, I'd like to introduce you to some of the people of Peaksville, Ohio. This is Mr. Fremont. It's in his farmhouse that the monster resides. This is Miss Fremont. And this is Aunt Amy, who probably had more control over the monster in the beginning than almost anyone, but one day she forgot. She began to sing aloud. Now, the monster doesn't like singing, so his mind snapped at her, turned her into the smiling, vacant thing you're looking at now. She sings no more. And you'll note that the people in Peaksville, Ohio, have to smile. They have to think happy thoughts and say happy things, because once displeased, the monster can wish them into a cornfield or change them into a grotesque walking horror. This particular monster can read minds, you see. He knows every thought. He can feel every emotion. Oh, yes. Did I forget something? Didn't I? Oh, I forgot to introduce you to the monster. This is the monster. His name is Anthony Fremont. He's 6 years old with a cute little boy face and blue, guileless eyes. But then those eyes look at you, and you'd better start thinking happy thoughts, because the mind behind them is absolutely in charge. This is the Twilight Zone.
Very well done. Nice.
Yeah, good job, Jacob.
No real
And
big
that's-
words.
And
Yeah.
that's not me saying that because I don't want to be wished into the cornfield.
Triv,
Ah!
literally, Triv. Yeah, I would say, Triv, it'd be easier for you just to,
I wished her into a whatever that thing is.
I'm a
What'd you
damn
call it?
cassowary.
What?
Cassowary.
Cassowary.
It's like an emu.
She's an obituary.
No, a cassowary.
Yeah, I am an obituary. I'm
No,
I'm a
cassowary.
Tupperwary.
Zoom. Okay, so that's the end of the episode, because we got all the information we'll ever need for this episode. Literally, a bunch of people got transported back into like the fucking angels from Doctor Who, and they now live in Ohio, which I feel sorry for them. They live in the middle of the nowhere with no electricity,
do.
no nothing. This sounds like a place that actually I kind of want to live in right now. Nobody around. Yes, angels. I mean, Jacob, you kind of live live in an area where like nobody around. Is it nice?
Yes,
Is it-
very nice.
You don't have like people like screaming and yelling. I mean, outside your
not.
kids and it's
And your
just,
When I lived in
I-
the city, you hear people screaming and yelling, and it's just another day. Here, if I hear people screaming and yelling, there's a problem.
What if the goats scream?
Oh, they do. Yeah, you hear them. They're different than them. Ah!
like you have chickens, right? You hear them like
do.
clucking.
Yeah, they keep low key. They just walk around going.
No, they scream like the goats too, Nick.
Oh, okay. I mean, hey, Jacob lives in another world, so I mean,
My
They-
goats,
maybe
Sonic
they
and
do
Amy,
scream.
are very vocal goats.
yeah. See, all you need is to put reins on them and have a little like cart. And you could be like Thor from Love and Thunder.
They're not that big. They're little goats.
Well, then you put
Oh.
one of your littler kids behind them.
Yeah, you always want to take fun pictures with the baby, so there you go. Anyways, okay, so Anthony Fremont, played by Bill Mumy, probably his outside Will Robinson, probably his most notable role he's ever played. This kid is evil. This kid is like this feels like a sequel to Rosemary's Baby. Like they had the kid, and this is what the kid turned out to be. So I have to ask you guys this, and I'm curious: are children like? Why are children in horror films? Like, what makes them so scary to you guys?
Innocence.
Like this kid's what's that?
Innocence.
Yeah.
Is that
Makes
what
them
it
scary.
is?
Kids are traditionally, well, even I think it's ingrained in us. They're perceived as innocent, and you're supposed to protect them. They're supposed to be innocent and not bad. So when you have one that's all creepy and fucking evil, that's really scary because that just upends everything that you know within your bones.
Is that why they
Absolutely.
say innocent until proven guilty? Because of kids.
Maybe.
No, I mean, like for instance, one of the most horrifying films you ever watched, The Good Son, like about a kid who
Macaulay Culkin.
is, yeah, Macaulay Culkin is evil. It always makes me laugh because it's just like, for instance, this episode is parodied, of course, in The Simpsons, the Treehouse of Horror, where Bart has the ability. It's a as Trev alluded to earlier, it's parodying a lot of things. And it's basically not a very complex story. Even though I wrote a bunch of notes as I always do, it's these people have to walk around on eggshells throughout this. There's probably like what 15 people in this town, but this
Is it even
kid
that?
has what's that? Maybe 10. Okay, maybe 8 people. I think the whole town was watching TV later on, but
Yeah.
they're all walking on eggshells. Which actually, I got to ask you that they're walking on eggshells because Anthony Fremont has this ability to he's telepathic ability. He has the ability he can do anything with mental powers that he has. And I gotta wonder, do you think it was smart not having very many people in this episode? Do you think it would feel like it was too much for the episode? Like, I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I
Like
don't
for
know how
just
you
not
would
having
have.
well, no,
I'm
go
not.
ahead, go ahead.
I don't know how you would have had, because even though it's a pretty tight, like your locations and everything are pretty small, but I don't. If you try to do too much with it, I think what Anthony does kind of loses its pizzazz. Like you
Yeah.
have to see it kind of build up. Like, oh, he did this. Oh, he did that. Oh, he did this other thing. You just kind of see, like you tip your toe into the water of what Anthony is, and
Well,
then
you
you go
also
a little
get the-
deeper and a little
you-
deeper.
Through the story, you found out there were more people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
they
do
were
wonder,
cornholes
and this
now.
is really random question, but I wonder how long the town has been like that. Because they talk about the machines being gone and everything, and if Anthony is only 6, like, would he have, as like a 2-year-old, like, say, been scared by a car backfiring, and then he
Well,
like without thinking just gets rid of it?
that reminds me a little bit of, and this is another weird movie to talk about, but it feels like Looper a little bit, where that kid, his abilities are uncontrollable at a young age, or like, I don't know, Professor X when he becomes
Yeah.
like mentally unstable. Like this kid probably did some things that freaked them out, but as he grew more conscious and sentient, what's that word?
Sentient.
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 Yeah. He realized what he was able to do. Plus, as Jacob has alluded to with his kids and stuff like that, young kids like this, their view of the world is completely selfish in their own right because of what they don't know. And I guess it's not the right word, selfish, but they don't have that
It's
mind
not-
of thinking.
Their
It's not
perceptions,
maliciously selfish,
right?
Yeah.
but it is selfish because I mean that's all they know. That's parents'
Yeah.
job to teach them not to be selfish pricks.
Right. It's that
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
probably with his perception of the world, like at the one point it had been very warm and then it starts to snow. That whole thing
Right.
of, there's no thought given to, well, shit, it's going to destroy the crops, or this isn't, you can't, it's still a normal earth, where they live is still earth. And,
Yeah.
there's no thought beyond the repercussions of that moment.
It's like the gopher thing, when the guy Bill, I think it's Bill, who's like in love. I think Cloris Leachman, I think it's Bill. They have like a thing going on between them, but they can't do anything because they don't want to piss off Anthony. But
right,
he makes like the 3-headed gopher. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
the
3-headed
creature.
gopher. Yeah,
and he kills it. It's like that thing. It's like he doesn't think logically about, as kids don't. It's like when we open up those toys that end up becoming very valuable, we don't think about that kind of shit. We just are on instinct, or me getting picked. Like, I don't know, you guys probably got picked on as kids too, but the kids that were picking on you and stuff like that, no one thought about it. No one was thinking about the effects of that kind of thing. And in essence, that's kind of what's going on here. Is just this kid is
You always
just
had
not
that
being
one
told
kid
no-
though.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's kids I look back and I'm like, I saw them do things.
Yeah.
I saw that kind of behavior happening, and I'd be like, and then years later I look back, I'm like, these kids weren't bad. They were just, being stupid kids. There's always that one kid. Who this kid is?
Doyle.
Who you knew even as a young kid, you're like, you're fucking crazy. And
Right.
I knew 2 of them. over the years, but it's like you are gonna end up there's something next level about you. You were disturbed and you're gonna be bad. And that's what happened with both of them. Well, one of them, I don't know about the other one. I heard things, but one of them I know for sure.
I do wonder, like, this
yeah.
kid, like Anthony reminds me of Sid from Toy Story.
Will Poulter.
Yeah. No, the
I know.
Yeah.
Everybody makes that joke that he looks like him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Well, I mean, he
Holy
was in
shit,
Son of
I didn't think
Rambo.
about that.
Wasn't he like an asshole in Son of Rambo? Anybody watch that movie?
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
I saw it when it first came out. That was him, wasn't
It's
it?
a great movie.
Yeah, I think it was.
I forgot about that.
It was very good.
But in essence, this kid has brought them back to the, this is like, what's interesting about this is the whole idea of like not having cell phones and horror films and stuff like that. It allows this horrific situation to play out where they don't have phones, they don't have any way of escape. It's horrifying to have a kid control everything because, as we've talked about, and we will do an episode where we talk about It's a Good Life from the Joe Dante point of view. That kid sits in front of TV. Their food ingestion is a bunch of donuts and candy and cakes and stuff like that. The sister gets blown into a TV and stuff like that. It's just the fact that I think what makes this episode work is just having the kid as would
He's
you
God.
quote unquote call him God, but would you call him the antagonist?
For the time and place, I don't think that Rod Serling probably would have called him that, at least to your general audience. But yeah, behind the scenes, he was totally the antagonist. I mean, he was going from what he knew and he was driven by his perceptions of everything. Oh, that dog is bugging me, to the cornfield. That person looked at me weird.
Yeah.
You're a terrible person because you talked back to me.
Right. I just kind of love that. I mean, even though this may not be like a top 10 episode, I love the simple fact that like as we grow to become adults, become more cynical. And in this episode, they can't be cynical, and it shows the horrific nature of like how your life view has to be in this kind of predicament. And I don't know. I just find that fascinating. I don't know how you guys feel. So
it's kind of and I know the movie's not great, but with the Eternals Sprite,
yeah,
she had that whole wariness of the world and didn't have that childlike innocence, and I think to some extent you get a little bit of that with Anthony. Like you can even though it's I suppose it's more that bitter, like that like, oh well, he looked at me weird or that, but you just see that kind of vindictive, do anything to get your point across kind of a thing. And maybe that doesn't make sense. I apologize.
No, it's like Peter Pan. I watched the new rendition of Peter Pan the other day.
Oh, I heard that was bad.
I liked it actually. It was pretty good.
Oh wow,
really?
I think Jude Law is really awesome as Captain Hook, but it's the same thing there. There's a point in that movie where Peter's trying to convince Captain Hook, because they used to be friends as kids or whatever, and he's like, "Yeah, I think happy thoughts," and Captain Hook goes, "I don't have any," and jumps off the wall, whatever. It's the same thing here. It's like these people are having to fake excitement and happiness to appease this kid. And as I was saying, Jacob, I don't know if you heard, as we grow to be adults, we become very cynical human beings, and not having that cynical nature in an episode causes horrifying results, as we learn to see.
The word "good" is repeated 46 times in this episode.
Jesus Christ.
Think good thoughts.
Well, and the way that Bill
it's
is
really good, guys.
Exactly. The way that Bill kind of keeps, and I suppose it's because, like you say, him and Cloris Leachman kind of had their thing going, but there is that kind of sucking up of, oh, make sure to tell Anthony that, I found him tomato soup because I know how much he likes it. That's real good. I mean, that whole bit. Mm-hmm. But with that scene, do you think they were running out of food? The way they talked?
That and the whole thing about the crops in the end, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, like that makes it really interesting. As a kid is not cognizant or consciousness of the fact that they need to eat or drink. He's more worried about turning gophers into three-headed monsters, or making things disappear, or watching dinosaurs kill each other, on which I thought was a fun little Ray Harryhausen. I think it was like maybe an homage to Harryhausen and his the use of like stop motion and stuff like that. It was really kind of a clever bit. But but yeah, he doesn't think about like what adults think about it. We need food, we need survival, we need, cynical nature, which gets us through life, and it's just a really interesting contrast between the two worlds, I think.
I don't know. My like whole thought process on this episode, I said this a minute ago, kind of like changed when Trish started talking and she said,
Oh, sorry.
No, when you said the thing about
Yeah,
the
me
kid
too.
and like essentially being
Spoiled little bitch.
well, kind of like the episode's like a metaphor, if you will, or whatever, for kids getting their way and all that. And I know we've talked about it at length at this point, but like that kind of like, wow, I'm looking at everything in this episode different now.
Yeah,
Because I just kind
yeah.
of took it at face value, honestly, as I watched it, because I was familiar with the story, very familiar with the story, because I really liked the one from the movie. So then watching this one, I was really not paying attention to. I mean, I was paying attention to it, but I wasn't like dissecting some of the underlying themes and all that. I was just kind of, because I was familiar with the story, I was kind of like, oh, there's nothing else for me to gain there. I was just comparing the two, and now I'm like, oh man, there's like so much more to this. So like as we go on, I like see a lot more, and that just kind of blew my mind. It still is, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Didn't really add much, I know, but
No, that's okay.
that threw me off. That I typically, when we say things, it's like I recognize or I realize them when we're talking about the episodes. I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that. I kind of caught on to some of that. This one, I was like, wow, just how did I not see that? Especially when I feel really strongly about that subject. I was like, how did I just miss that?
Well, I
I feel
mean,
real strong about that, but I was just like, damn, that's
yeah.
in your face. Like, and now that I know, I'm like, man, it's like beating you over the head with it. And I was just like, oh, kid got special powers, send him out to the corn.
And I don't know if that was, and I say that because I don't know if that was intended. Like, I don't know, because there's nothing really, and I don't know, did you see anything in the companion, Nick, about that? One way or the other?
What was it about?
About the kind of spoiled kid thing. I mean,
There being,
I
I don't see how
let me
it could
check.
not, because back then, especially, they took like disciplining your children and giving them good upbringing very seriously.
that's
Like a lot,
true.
and all honesty, less than people do nowadays.
Well, and
Nowadays,
about
YouTube and TV will do it.
yeah, well, and about that time, I've got a lot of family that was kind of from that era, and growing up, I heard a lot about there's this guy called Dr. Spock that was very much more about the worried about feelings and things like that, and that changed a lot of the way that a lot of people parented based on that. So I don't see Rod Serling as being the kind that would be like, oh, we're gonna make something that's gonna be a statement against this kind of parenting. But it is maybe that's partially what drove this episode. Like, I would be really interested to know what drove this episode.
Well, with all that, and I mean, we could totally be wrong here, but like with the Dr. Spock stuff and all that, and yeah, I'm familiar with him, but like how they did have this well, that's when it started. It didn't really like go into full swing until later on, but how it was more about feelings and all this and that, and less like black and white, like bad punishment.
Yeah.
Right.
I do think, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there is like something to that, but at the same time, that can be a bit too harsh at times and put like a emotional divide between you and your children. So I do get the whole thing about like parenting, putting feelings into it some, but I think the problem is that people tend to take things and run with them. So they took it and they said, oh, now we only use our feelings when we parent with our children. And like, you can't do that. At times you can't put feelings in it, because you have to put the kid's best interest at heart, and their best interest is to prepare them for adulthood and show them what the world is. And sometimes you got to be the bad guy. Right. And wow, this episode just really took on a whole new thing. But I think that this was kind of showing, and I think you're right. I think Rod Serling I think he was traditionalist, but also progressive at the same time. I think he would have probably, because he was a parent by this point, and that's how he was parented. So he probably saw the value in that traditional parenting of like, a bit a firmer hand, if you will. But then he probably I could be totally wrong, but he struck me as the type who would probably be like, there's something to this, and maybe we do need to inject like a little bit of feeling into it, and like take the kids' feelings into consideration a bit more, and not be so harsh. But I think also at the same time, he probably had the foresight to say, but knowing human nature, if we go too far with this thing, this is what could happen.
Right.
Well,
It's balance.
that's the thing about
Should be balanced.
right. That's the thing you notice about the Twilight Zone in general is every story is about some form of human condition, some form of human ideology, and the way we work and tick as a person, as a human being. And it's the same thing here. It's like, you know, this is to me personally, the fears and scariness of, you know, kids and how they grow up and how, you know, how you control that. And like, as you're saying, sometimes you have to be the bad guy. If you're not the bad guy, it could be turned into something really problematic, as we see. But like even you go back to the stupid crap like Trouble Templeton or The Fever, there's some form of human ideology to it, and that's what's happening here. These people will not say no and can't say no, and therefore they've got themselves in this really terrible situation that
Well, it
when
is
they try
almost
to
like
fight,
you
Yeah.
said something there. It's like they can't say no. And of course, that's like, oh, of course, you could always say no to a kid. But it is almost like when you have a kid that has been told yes, 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 and babied, if you will, for so long, it almost does become nothing's impossible, but it becomes almost impossible to say no because you've dug
Yeah.
this hole and you're in it. And now it's like, if you say no, it's like, like they throw a fucking tantrum and send you to the cornfield. And like, it's almost like, and I get it, parents that have done that. I mean, part of me is like, I mean, you reap what you sow. You did this. You know, you created this monster, if you will. But then at the same time, I'm like, I get it. I mean, sometimes as a parent, when shit's just like piling on, you're like, I don't fucking care. Go. Can I do this? Can I do this? And you've said no, 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 no. And then you're finally just like, I don't care. Just go. And just like, don't, you know what I mean? So sometimes, you know, it is easier, you know, to give them what they want. But in those situations when you have those psychotic kids that just have always been told yes, yeah, it is almost impossible to break that. Nothing's impossible, but it is extremely difficult. So this is obviously a heightened version of that, but yeah.
I mean,
like you said, they can't say no.
Right. Like, for instance, you have like this kid goes into his father's room, starts looking around. You know, I'm assuming this guy doesn't have a Playboy or something like that in his room, but I like how he looks under the bed and he's just like looking around. And it's like at some point, I'm assuming as a parent, you'd be like, get the fuck out of my room. You know, you're not supposed to be in here.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it's the same thing here. It's like, yeah, he's just in there. He's like, oh, I hate that fucking dog, and I hate this, and I hate that, and you know, the blah 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 was a bad man, so I set him on fire. And it's like, shit, this is going some dark places. But it's that type of thing where if a kid had this ability, you'd be scared as shit. You wouldn't know what to do. Can you imagine if like one of your kids had this ability, like how fucking frightened and you'd probably be like Don or Dan, you'd be like he's distracted, like punch his kid in the face or something.
I loved that.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
like when the
everybody's
lady, the mom, was it the mom who said, yeah, they were talking about the fucking freakish horrors he was creating outside, but they were like, oh, it's great. And she was like, yeah, he created some kind of beaked creature, evil, sharp-toothed monster the other day. But then
you
it
remember
tried
when we
to
had
bite him.
pigs?
Kind of hoped it would.
Well, and to be held under that, I mean, because you are kind of held at gunpoint at that point, you know, like your thoughts are, I mean, it is kind of a 1984 type scenario because if you step out of line, like you have the whims of a 6-year-old, you know, that you're up against the whims of a 6-year-old. So it is.
It took this kid when he did his magic to the couple of people he did it in this one. It took him a minute. All right.
It did.
Yeah.
I feel like I would have had enough time
patience
to hit his ass with a bat or something.
But you think, okay, but you think about living under that threat for that long, like, and not knowing, well, I'm going to wish him to the cornfield. Well, what does that mean? What, you know, is he going to turn you into some kind of a freakish horror before he does that? You know, how long, like.
But the funny part is like they find out in the sequel that the cornfield is just the rest of the world.
Right, exactly.
He sends you back.
But they don't know that.
It's like
it's
like the reverse angels.
Oh yeah. But to think about it, you don't know what he's capable of, and to live under that stress for that long, you know, how do you either crumble to it and submit, or you get defiant and want to listen to Perry Como.
I mean, they know he's capable of bursting people into fucking flames because he talks.
Yeah.
Was it the dog
No,
or
there
a
was a guy
person.
that he
Oh yeah, it
first
was like a
claims.
farm. It was
It's
like the
somebody he didn't
farmer,
like.
like a
That's what
crop
made him
over.
burn, Daddy. I
Yeah.
made him burn
Yeah.
real good.
Yeah.
He was like, "Yeah, it was awesome. It smelled fantastic."
Yes, exactly. I craved ribs. Damn it, we haven't had ribs for
Lawnmower
ages.
man his ass.
He did. He
Yeah.
totally did.
He probably was complaining about the bees again,
Not the bees.
But basically, all this is happening. The only one that's really saying anything that the kid doesn't really react to is the grandmother, because he silenced her in a lot of ways, made her a simpleton.
I mean,
But
she's basically been lobotomized.
yeah, because she's like talking about how he's been in the barn for like way too long. Who knows what a kid that age is in the barn for too long for, but
Oh, we know.
we know. but it all kind of is culminating to this event where they're going to be sitting around TV. They're going to celebrate Dan Hollis's birthday and stuff like that. And it's just the nature. You don't see anybody. You don't really see anybody outside of the parents and the grandmother and whatever the young strapping fucking delivery boy or whatever. And we get to the birthday party, and it's it's a kind of a chaotic event. Animals or dinosaurs are being killed. Perry Como records are being given as gifts and without the sleeve apparently. Which only 5 bottles of liquor, and he just decides he's gonna destroy one in the fireplace. And I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Like all this stuff that starts happening, like you can start seeing stuff boil over. You actually think it's gonna go one way and it ends up going another? I mean, what do you guys think? Happy birthday.
Well, that
Exactly.
one guy was just like, "Fucking, I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck anymore." He's back there with a drink. He's like, "Wang," and kid's like, "Don't make any noise while the music's going." He's like, "Oh, okay." He's just I like that guy because he like all his fucks were given. He was like, "I don't
Yeah.
give a fuck anymore. Fuck you, fuck you, you little shit." And he even tells him, he's like, "Somebody do something. Take his ass the fuck out."
Right. The wife's like, "Don't say anything." He's like, "Fuck you, woman.
It's
I
too
want to
late.
have your
now.
birthday.
It's
I want to
too
drink my
fucking late.
brandy."
I'm gonna
It's my
fucking up
party,
the
and
kid.
I'll be turned into something if I want to.
Right. The kid, I mean, it'd be amazing if like this was remade in the 1990s with the kid from what's that movie of John Ritter with the hellion of a
Oh,
kid?
Problem Child.
Problem Child.
Yeah.
That's what this feels like, Problem Child.
I liked for the early 60s TV this went. It didn't
Uh-huh.
show a lot, but it alluded to a lot of things. Like the fucking Jack in the Box, or like the creature he was making, or talking about the creatures he made and the things he's done.
Yeah.
Nowadays I feel like it would have shown it, and that kind of sometimes it'd be neat to see some of the things like we do with the update in the 80s, but it is kind of neat to just it added to this like mystique and this terror, this horror of it all when you just hear about. And I'm all about, hey, show don't tell, but sometimes telling in the right way can be better than actually seeing, because like it just kind of adds to the terror of what this kid can do. He walks around like, hey, I'll burn you the fuck alive, and like and it really made this kid seem fucking sinister.
Right.
And
You
like with
think
how you see just off screen, like whatever gerbil thing or whatever gopher he's making, 3-headed monsters, and like the Jack in the Box thing, really, it didn't show anything but the idea behind it.
yeah.
Like the visual I had in my head and the very little bit they showed was just enough to like really put the visual in my head. And I don't really think there's anything else they could have shown that would have matched that visual I had in my head. Even
Oh,
now.
absolutely.
Well, that's the thing. When he eventually confronts Anthony and he's like, saying all he needs to say, and Anthony's like, "You're a bad, bad man." And the guy's like, "Will somebody please fucking knock? I'm giving you permission to be a child. Just do it. We will nightmare as a child, this motherfucker." And they don't do anything because they're so scared and so kind of I don't know what that word is when you're submissive.
They're
Subservient.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
subservient.
subservient. They're Serbian film.
Subserve.
Subvert. Anyways, but as Jacob has alluded to, the big twist is the guy gets turned into a Jack in the Box, and yes, it is very cheesy looking at to today's standards because you could do much better technology today, but it's just horrifying. This guy has now been turned into a freak, a scary Jack in the Box character. He's probably dead at this point.
It's like
You would
he's
think.
been beheaded
Yeah,
Basically, yeah.
through magic and stuck on a fucking spring, popping out of a box with a dunce cap on. Like I said,
right.
and it shows like close up of him just kind of doing this, and you get the shadow on the wall. Like the imagery, yes, could they show something more horrific and better nowadays? But there was something about, for me, piecing all that together in my head and seeing what lies beyond the borders of the screen in my head, I think is probably more terrifying than anything they could have shown or would
Oh,
have.
absolutely. Well, and even Anthony's description of it, I turned him into it. Like, there's no remorse.
Yeah, he's just
There's
like,
there's no second thought. There is. Oh, I drew a chalk drawing outside. I turned him into a Jack in the Box.
and all their horror on their faces, and they come and they're like, just wish it away, please, wish it away, get it the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to, and I'm sure I've said this before, but I'll say it again. One of the most horrifying scenes in cinema, in my opinion, well done, is in Ben-Hur, when they find Ben-Hur's mother and sister that are in, they're lepers, and they're in a jail cell that they've been in for like 5 years or something. So they've just been stewing as lepers in this fucking jail cell. They've been locked up. Nobody's seen them. And the guy, the prison guard, opens the door, and we see it from their perspective. We don't ever see them. We just see him open the door, and it's all on his face and how he's horrified. And he's like, "Oh my God." And he's like, "Ah." It never shows that. It does eventually show them, and they're not really that bad. But like that right there made you think, "Oh my God, what does he see?" And like the visual you get will never compare, or what they finally show you never compares with the visual. So sometimes showing less is more.
Jaws.
Yeah, I was just about to
people?
say
yeah.
Jaws.
Yeah, Jaws. I mean, yeah, just in general, there. I can't remember what movie I watched, but someone actually says that almost the exact quote where the more you see, the less effective it is.
The new Blair Witch Project movie, or Blair Witch movie.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not
Oh,
a bad
yeah,
movie, honestly. Not
yeah.
bad. But you get to the end and they just throw that bitch all over the screen. You see this CG
Right.
monster, and it totally deflates the whole fucking thing. Like,
Yeah, 'cause
it's
that's-
so bad, it deflates the first movie. Like,
Well,
Well, that's what I was
everything
gonna say. Like
is
the first
lost.
movie is so perfect an example of like all you do is hear things, all you do is feel things, but you don't see things, and that's what makes it work so well. It's great low budget filmmaking.
Yeah, you
It's
want
what-
more, but
You don't
kinda
need
don't.
it.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
want more, but if you get more, it's gonna ruin it. So that is the perfect balance right there, where you're wanting more, but not like you feel unsatisfied. You're just wanting more because you're so curious and so interested. Like, what is it? And that's what they do here. We like see these things. Well, we don't see these things. We see like the shadow on the wall, or you hear things and all that, or you hear about the cornfield. What is in the cornfield? I don't want to see that. I mean, I do. Part of me is like, I
The
want to
baseball
see all these
players.
things, but I know I know for a fact, if I see them, it won't live up to it. So I'm like, no, I don't want to see it. Keep it the way it is.
Right. Look at Psycho. Like, look at the shower scene in Psycho where people will claim, "Oh, I saw a boob, or I saw blood, or I saw whatever." You see nothing. The
Yeah,
way
you
that
don't
it's
see it.
cut, it's masterfully done.
You see Rob
And-
Zombie in the new one, but
Yeah, great. Woohoo. But yeah, and regarded this is done on a TV budget, in a different way, but
Well,
it's
that's
definitely
just-
still that same feel.
That's the same thing with Halloween. Like it's effective because there's actually not much violence in that movie. There's very little violence you actually see, but it's effective because there's something lurking in the shadows somewhere. And no, it's not Alec Baldwin, but you see someone lurking in the shadows. It's the same thing here. It's like
Or
unlike
Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Look at
yeah, true.
like there is violence and there's a lot that goes on, but there's so much more. Like, you think back and it's like, oh my God, it's such a violent movie. But if you actually sit down and watch it, like, with that thought in
the
mind,
dirty movie.
yeah, oh, very, but yeah, but you don't really. There's
Well,
not a lot to speak of.
and that, if you look back at all the true, there are all right, The Thing, The Fly, The Thing, these show all the nastiness, the goriness, the terror on screen, and they're cool. I love them. I think
but
they're both great.
It's condensed. It's not a lot. There's not a
It's-
lot of it.
Not
like Alien.
well, they're horror movies, but I don't find them terrifying. They're
Right.
hard. It's kind of like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, look at all. It's that kind of like that's so nasty and it's cool because it's so over the top, and that's great for those that works. But like true like terror, like fear, I find those are the ones that you can't show it. Don't show it's never gonna match up. Just fear and terror is what you can't see. That's why people are afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
They're terrified. They're fearful of what they don't know. So if you see it, you know it, and it's not terrifying anymore. And this one, I think it did a good job. It makes this kid really fucking terrifying because you don't see it, but you know it. So that's what makes
another
it really
perfect example. I would say another perfect example of a movie that just came out in the last like 10 years is It Follows.
Oh
Where
yeah.
you don't see it. You just have somebody
you
following
definitely don't see
somebody.
anything there.
Yeah.
Well, the
but
Babadook, that
the
was a good
discussion
one,
of what
too.
happens. Yeah.
Whatever is on screen, like obviously we see the shadow. Whatever is on screen, you build it, and I guess you guys have covered it, but what you see in your head, what you picture it being, your own fears put on or
Always
laid
works.
over top of this implied thing will make it 10 times more terrifying than anything that you're going to be able to see on screen because it's specific to you.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact they can't listen to an album or, watch TV or live in the rat race of a city, which the grandmother talks about, is as stupid as that sounds, it's oddly terrifying because, especially if you think about today, and I'm not saying like any of like the three of us, but just in general, think about if your cell phones were taken away, think if, the car was taken away, all this stuff was taken away because of some weirdo kid or some weirdo kind of entity, there'd be mass hysteria. Cats and dogs living together, that type of thing. So.
Now, I will say, as we have this conversation, I'm sitting here advocating for don't show anything, show less, show less, show less. I do have to admit that when it comes to the one I'm more familiar with, the 80s Twilight Zone movie that does do its version of this story.
Yeah.
Some of the imagery in that is fucking nightmare fuel and is fucking
like
terrifying.
The woman with no mouth, that type of thing.
His sister. But you know what made that, and it is still kind of the same thing, because with that, I was going to actually talk about that one in particular. It showed in the new, and this isn't in this one, but in the newer, the 80s version, his sister, for those of you that haven't seen it, it shows her, you see her like this watching TV, and she's like doing that from over the top of the TV. And then it's like you hear about how she talked too much or yelled at him, I think, and he didn't like it. So then as they walk out of the room, the camera pans up and it comes down and you see she's all like Neo from the Matrix. She has no mouth. Like it's just skin. And it is kind of terrifying. She's got these wide eyes. She's looking like that, almost like she's screaming, but nothing's coming out because there's no mouth. She has no mouth and she must scream. But like that imagery was kind of like, damn. And it was done really well. But I think that if you had seen that situation happen, like if they went back and instead of telling, they just like showed that whole thing with her screaming at him and him being like, no mouth, and like, it would have lost something. Like just hearing the story of how it happened and how such a simple thing of like somebody talking shit and that's why I made their mouth go away, and just hearing it and then seeing that imagery, I think worked perfect. So it was still a little bit of the, well, yeah, you're seeing more here. You're still not seeing the whole thing. You're not seeing the horrible action take place. So it is still kind of terrifying.
It's strategic.
Yeah.
What it is. It's, and that specifically, there's that body horror element, know.
It's not, well, yeah, I mean, it's not like the David Cronenberg body horror, but
it is still for a
kid.
PG movie done in the mid 80s. That is, I mean, I would classify that as a form of body horror. But
PG
yeah,
in the 80s was hardcore.
Yeah, no, you're not
well,
wrong.
that's what I was gonna say. Like that version of It's a Good Life is very much of what the 80s represented, which was a more visceral look into the horror, the horror elements and stuff like that, where the 60s was all about what can we do to make something horrifying on a limited budget. Because I mean, outside of like the monster movies in the 50s and 60s, and Rosemary's Baby, I guess, was 60s.
That was
as well.
70s, I think.
Was it? I thought it was 60.
That was around the same time as The Exorcist, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 1968.
So. Oh, okay.
But no, anyways, but it's just like there's a level of veracity and uncomfortableness that comes with what they were able to do with very, very little. And that's why, you look at something like Jaws and stuff like that and what they were able to accomplish. And now you just have a bunch of outside of stuff like Smile and stuff like that. It's mostly just CGI boringness now
Man,
compared
that
to
was
what it used
another
to
one. It Blair Witched the shit out of the end of that.
be. It
was
did,
so
but
good. That
it
movie
had
was
a
really
fun-
good, but
yeah,
it wasn't awful. But it lost something there in the end of that one. I know we're not talking about
right.
that. It did lose something there in the last few minutes.
But that's
For me.
why when it comes to horror films, I like stuff that are unique and different. And like I said, I think It Follows is really the last time I really enjoyed a horror film that kind of just freaked me the fuck out. Now it's just like, when we watch Evil Dead Rise, as much as that movie's awesome,
Well, it's
did
that
it
what I
really
was talking
scare
about a
you?
minute ago. It's not
Yeah,
scary. It's
yeah,
just like
Gory.
so over the top, gory and bloody. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah. But I was never sitting in there like, oh, I'm scared. I didn't go home and like, oh, I don't want to turn the lights out because there might be a deadite. No, I've never been like that about Evil Dead.
yeah. Well,
But
no,
you're
I'm
not
just saying in
supposed to be
general,
that
yeah.
about Evil Dead. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a different.
It's fun horror.
Yeah.
It's not like terrifying horror is that shit you don't see. Like Candyman when I was a kid scared the fuck out of me because you don't see that motherfucker and he just like pops up behind you. That shit always scared the shit out of me.
I will say the Fear Street, I think it was the first
Yeah,
one.
Fear Street. Yeah.
Like where the chick's head goes through the
bread slicer.
Yeah, that
So good.
that I mean that wasn't scary per se, but it left me feeling with the heebie-jeebies something fierce.
Well, you weren't expecting that either.
No,
We're
that's
getting on a
true.
tangent, but I totally was not expecting that character to get it, and it didn't even build up to it. It just happened, and you're like, oh fuck, they just wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Super violently just killed that person.
Yep.
But
Now I want a
like stuff.
sandwich, damn it.
I think that's why people like stuff like Midsummer and whatever the other film he directed.
Hereditary.
Hereditary.
And Beau is Afraid.
We don't talk about Beau's Afraid apparently.
Oh.
Yeah,
We
like
don't
man,
like
What did you guys?
love-
I assume you've both seen or familiar enough. I know you are, Nick. Triv, we haven't really talked about it with the movie version, the '80s movie version, right?
Of
Well,
this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a different thing. It had the whole Looney Tunes thing going. I like the fact that it wasn't a family that was forced to be a quote family.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. I mean, Joe Dante. I mean,
Well,
he's
it
gonna
turned
have
into Evil Dead.
It's
2
actually-
halfway through it.
it did very much.
it's actually rewritten by Richard Matheson.
Really?
Yeah,
It was in spirit a successor to the, or not successor, a remake in spirit. But I mean, you saw because there's a Jack in the Box in that one too, isn't there?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, it's a Tasmanian devil.
There's one in the Simpsons episode.
There's a
that he
Tasmanian
turns-
devil. That's what it is, and it comes out.
Yeah,
And, it's like, and it goes, blah, and the guy's like, ah! It's like, yeah, that's.
I will say, and it's a story of two very different approaches. If you look at the movie itself, I think for me personally, I think it's the strongest of those stories in the movie itself.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
I
it
think it's the
definitely did
one that,
involve someone getting killed in real life. So
yeah, well, exactly.
There's
And
that
honestly, it just overall, like, it was my favorite from those stories. In this
it was
setting,
the actual most terrifying one. That's for damn sure.
oh, absolutely. And that's, I mean, part of the joy of the 80s, and that's what Joe Dante does. He has that ability to be very good at that. As far as comparing it to this, I'm always a proponent for like the less is more, and obviously show don't tell is always a better perspective, but the terrifying, like you said, what you bring into this, is what you take from it from the terror perspective, whatever they would have had in mind, whatever Rod Serling had in mind for that Jack in the Box is, nothing compared to what you add to it for yourself.
Mhm.
yeah,
And Bill Mumy is just like, he's got that. You can see him be adorable and then just switch on this terrifying, like, evil dead thing or evil thing.
right. And the funny thing is, and we'll talk about the ending real quick, is what I love about the ending is not the simple fact that he made it snow and he's a kid and his temper is like a mood ring or whatever. It's a simple fact that the snow represents kind of a dust bowl situation where the one main thing that people worry about is survival. And when you have a kid upending that survival with the plant situation, the crops. You know, you look at like the ice problems and stuff like that when they happened, or like I said, the Dust Bowl. When shit like that happens, it's terrifying for an adult. It's terrifying for a human being, because like, what do you do when everything you need is gone because, you know, some asshole situational incident happens? And that's what I think the kid really represents in a lot of respects, is not only the nature of what kids can do, but also the nature of like what happens when we have a pandemic, or what happens when we don't have the things we need and we have no way of getting around it. Like, what will it cause us to do? And it's really fascinating that it just kind of ends with the guy being put in the Jackson box and disappeared, to the cornfield, to them, the world snowing. And I don't know, what do you guys think about that?
Honestly, so then this is maybe a different take than that, but all day people were talking about how hot it was and everything. I think, and I, not knowing Anthony's intentions, like, because again, 6-year-old, and despite the fact that, you know, he kind of rolls on whims and, oh, I feel like making it snow. Do you think that it was maybe his way of trying to, like, oh, well, they didn't like it when it was so hot, I'll make it cold, or I'll make it snow,
Well,
you
yeah,
know?
but that's true too. I mean, it's the kid not thinking logically about, you know,
But
as
also
kids do.
trying to, like, be, oh, well, they didn't like it when it was hot, so I'm gonna make it snow to make them happy
Yeah.
to some extent.
So you
I don't know.
think he was actually giving
I
it,
don't know if
like,
this kid
trying
gave a
to,
shit. I
yeah.
think he was just like, I like snow.
That is true too. He definitely
He's like,
rolled on whims by
yeah,
any
I
mean,
was waiting
but
for a Christmas tree to pop up or something like that, you know?
he turns
Hmm.
Aunt Anne into a tree, or Aunt Amy into a tree.
Yeah. Well, there was a,
Well,
oh, that
I
was hypnotic.
I like this episode. I thought, because I guess we mentioned, yeah, it just ends. It's like, hey,
Well,
are
I
we?
Like,
mean,
well,
you are definitely left with a, oh shit scenario of, well, food is tight, and I don't know if they would have ever asked him for food, or maybe he has to have things that exist to some extent, like he can't create something out of nothing.
I
I
don't
guess
know.
he probably can, but I don't know.
I actually like the end, but I do think the end of this one and the end, of course, the end of this one and the end of the movie version from the 80s are two of the biggest differences. But I think that the end of this one quintessentially changes the tone, the entire tone of this episode as compared to the other one. And it's definitely a different tone than we typically have with Twilight Zone, because there's no real resolution, which does lead me also with these epiphanies I've had due to Triv, because of the
I try.
what the episode, at least what its deeper meaning may be.
Mhm.
That in a lot of cases, unfortunately, there is no fixing it. Well, it's not going to be fixed. This is the cards you've been dealt, and in some cases you dealt them yourself. But I like the ballsiness of them to have this, show that typically it may not be a nice resolution, and it may not be something that you're in love with, but there's always a resolution. There's an end to it, and this
Yeah.
one just stops. And he even says it in the closing narration, which we'll get to, that, hey, this is just life for these people. And that gives it a whole new meaning, because these people don't get any kind of release. And that's one of the most depressing, dark fucking things that we've run across in this show. Because
well,
be it even if it was death, even if they all died, you know what? Hey, they got
yeah.
closure or something. No, they are stuck with this, and this is their lives, and they're just looking out the window like, oh no. And I mean that, like he says in the closing, we just wanted to introduce you to these citizens.
Well, that's the thing about,
We're
right.
not telling you a story. We're just giving you a snapshot of this world right here. And you're like,
Wow.
oh shit.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I
But
was going to say. What's interesting is you look at the 1980s version. Like I said, we'll talk about that. I think we're going to do it as a Christmas episode or whatever.
Yeah.
But you look at the 1980s version, and the one thing that episode does that this episode doesn't do is it shows what would happen if somebody like an adult took charge of the situation instead of being, pussyfooting around and stuff like that. and finding a way to put this kid's powers or this kid's nonsensical logic into good standings. And the what's her face, I can't remember who plays the woman in
The teacher, his
the
teacher.
teacher. She's well known, she's a well-known actress, but and here it's just like,
She's
no,
from
we're not gonna do that.
Poltergeist. Isn't the mom from Poltergeist? Am I thinking wrong?
No, I
It's
think
not
you're right.
Dee Wallace.
No,
Is it
it's
Keefer?
Joe Beth Williams, I think is. It's Joe Beth Williams who is the teacher. But I like that. I like that ending, but I also like this ending. I like the simple fact that, as
Oh,
you
yeah.
alluded to, they're fucked. There's nothing. They have no way out. They're never gonna have a way out. They're stuck in this scenario, and it's terrifying.
I think both of them have
Yeah.
something to say that I like what both of them have to say, but they're saying different things on the same subjects, especially if you take into account the thing about kids and this is how you can end up with a demon of a kid. Like this one is just like, yeah, you go down that road, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And this is the light. You're stuck with this forever. There's nothing you can do about it. The newer one was more like, yeah, this kid's an unholy terror and something needs to be done. Somebody needs to come in and take charge. And if you do that, that's what the kid's looking for is someone to take charge. The child is looking for an adult to come in and take charge of the situation. This kid, you come in, try and take care of the situation, he's gonna kill you.
He's chaos incarnate.
So the newer one has a little bit more of a positive, hopeful ending, saying that something can be done, but somebody's got to stand up. Somebody's got to say enough is enough.
Right. Yeah, and they get, as we'll learn, they get sent back to wherever they're from in that version. Here, they're fucked.
Yep.
That's what it comes down to.
The cornfield is oblivion.
Well, honestly, in the newer one, I don't remember. I think that and it's been a while since I saw it. Didn't he just create an all new place? Was that what it was? I don't remember.
In essence, that's what happens in this episode too. Is he creates this Peaksville, Ohio, or whatever it is.
No, I mean in the end of the newer one.
Oh,
it's like they drive down the road and like you see all the flowers blooming. I think because they're in nothing. He ends everything.
Yeah,
if you remember, he's just like they're in like the white nothingness that Mighty Mouse went to that one time at the end of the universe, and like they're just sitting there and like she's like, "What is this?" He's like, "It's all gone." She's like, "What do you mean?" Like, I did it all.
I just wonder if a Trey is going to show up at some point.
Nothing. And but yeah, like he I think in that one he just created a new existence. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I saw it.
Well,
but I do remember, like the flowers blooming.
I think it's ambiguous. I think it's
but definitely
it's never. Yeah. I think it's Joe Dante's like, we just need an ending. Throw some fog in there. White wall. We'll throw in some flowers later on. It'll be good.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
we got $5.
Right.
And I know I've been talking about the new one a lot, and we're talking about but I can't help but compare.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like when you talk
pieces.
about the chaser type of thing. It's like you kind of have to like compare them.
Yeah. Especially when that's the one I'm most familiar with. But.
Oh yeah.
Which we're gonna do that. I think we're gonna do that episode as like a kind of like a Patreon style episode. Just kind of do on that. We'll talk about that since we actually have the episode. But I mean, I don't know. Like my feelings on this episode are it's horrifying. I don't want to have kids. I especially don't want to have kids that will shoot you away to the cornfield because I live in Florida. I don't live in like the Midwest, so I don't need corn in my area.
You'll get swooped away to the Everglades.
Yeah, there you go.
Swooped away
I can
to Disney
say
World.
I have 7 children, and none of them have telepathic powers I'm aware of. But kids definitely can be assholes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's 100% true on that one. So
having spent quite a lot of the time in the cornfield as a kid, it's an interesting place. I would not suggest staying alive very long because it's weird. Woohoo! I'm a corn.
I'll do a corn maze for Halloween one time, and like monsters jumped out of it, tried to scare.
Oh no!
I mean, like it's a haunted corn maze.
Yeah, that makes a difference. Normal corn though is pretty weird too. So, just saying.
I watched a movie where Christopher Nolan like planted corn in the middle of a place that wouldn't have corn in Colorado.
Wow.
Right. And then it had like ships and black holes and tesseracts and all that stuff. No Perry Como though, which was a little disappointing. But
that is sad.
Big bookcase. So.
Yeah, big bookcases. Yeah. Did they may have said happy birthday? I don't know.
Oof.
But anyways, I mean, overall, I think this is the episode. I think represents what makes the Twilight Zone so special. I think the fact that Bill Mumy was put into this not really predicament, because he was almost killed in the last episode that he was in, which that's probably why he's so pissed off in this episode, because he was almost killed off screen. His grandmother was trying to kill him. But there's a reason this episode
episode.
Yeah, I know. But there's a reason this episode is so beloved, because Bill Mumy, for all the intents and purposes, is actually really good in this episode. Like the amount of weight he has on his shoulders to play an asshole, even though he apparently was not an asshole as a kid. It's got to be very difficult. And in the episode, Cloris Leachman is A-okay with me, I guess. If you guys agree.
I mean, the rest of the actors outside of Dan, like, they were all they played the role of scared shitless adults very well. But I think like the guy that played Dan, I mean, at near the end there, he was so desperate. I mean, he was actually like throwing spit all over the place. Like he was foaming at the mouth almost.
His fucks were given.
Yes.
Yeah. He's like, fuck the brandy. I'm gonna tell you what I think, kid.
No more to give.
Exactly.
I'm actually kind of happy that he got put in the cornfield, because now the brandy's still like, where the rum gone? This guy fucking destroyed all the rum. Now they have 4 bottles left.
Now he's just a Jack in the Box in the cornfield.
Blowing in the wind.
Just dust in the wind.
Dude.
Good in the wind.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's an episode that is well beloved by a lot of people. The third episode is actually when TV Guy ranked it number 31 in their 100th greatest episodes. Of course, they have 3 episodes in there, like Time Enough at Last and Monster Doing Maple Street. I guess the opening narration of this episode is sampled and threatened by Michael Jackson.
I can see that.
It's what?
Invincible. Sampled by Michael Jackson and threatened song from 2001. And of course, it was remade in the 80s, as well as a sequel-like episode with Bill Mumy as an adult. Treehouse of Horrors. What's that?
It's an interesting episode. I remember. No, it's
the 80s series.
It's 2003, I think it came out. It's an interesting episode. I don't remember a lot about it. I must have watched it at some point, but because I think they do actually show like a cornfield at that point, or they do at some point.
What's it called?
It's Still a Good Life.
Yeah, Cloris Leachman's actually in that episode too. Yeah. But also, if you guys have both watched Black Mirror, this was an episode that was inspiration for USS Callister, which is one of the most terrifying things I've ever watched, with Fat Matt Damon in it, whatever his name is. Yeah, Fat Damon.
Fat Damon.
Married to Kirsten Dunst.
Shit. If you hadn't said that, because that's just that's so bad. They call him Fat Damon, but it's kind of true. He's not fat, but
he actually turned
Stocky Damon.
Jesse Plemons has turned into like a really good actor. Yeah.
He is a good actor, and I hate that people they call him, but that's funny.
Well, yeah. Have you seen the USS Callister?
I haven't.
Episode? Oh, it's so good. It's what would happen if a guy created a video game and he used the spit DNA of like a lollipop to imprison clones into this virtual reality video game of people that he knew from the world he worked in. It's awesome. It's like one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen. So
it really is called It's Still a Good Life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I thought you guys were joking, like making some like I still know what you did last summer jokes. It's right here. It's on YouTube. It's Still a Good Life. Yep, I'm gonna watch that. It's only 20 minutes long.
And his daughter, his real life daughter, is his daughter in this episode.
Nice.
Just from the thumbnail that just shows a clip of it, it's very 2000s.
Oh yeah,
super. Just like that one episode we watched of the remake of
Chaser.
No, the one with the soldiers.
Yeah.
Passerby.
Yeah.
That was so 2000s.
How you know that? By the music.
Oh yeah,
it is. The music is what did it. I mean, the acting and the way the characters looks and everything, but still, it's like sort of fucking Dawson's Creek or something.
All of a sudden, Pacey jumps out and Dawson's like,
right.
Oh, it's a party of 5.
Yeah, exactly.
But with that said,
bitches.
Oh my god, I'm gonna stop you guys. Party of 5. Anyways,
Melrose Place.
90210. Okay, so with that said, I think we all agree it's a pretty good episode. So Jacob, hit it with
Yeah.
that amazing closing narration.
Oh, for sure. This is small potatoes compared.
You got to do it with some 2000s music in the background. I don't know, pick a song.
Throw in some Creed. Here we go. No comment here. No comment at all. We only wanted to introduce you to one of our very special citizens, little Anthony Fremont, age 6, who lives in a village called Peaksville, in a place that used to be Ohio. And if by some strange chance you should run across him, you had best think only good thoughts. Anything less than that is handled at your own risk. Because if you do meet Anthony, you can be sure of one thing. You have entered the Twilight Zone.
Anthony Fremont lives in a village down by
the
the
river.
Oh man. No, but in all honesty, that is like a great way to close it because he's like, I just wanted to show you this kid. I didn't really have anything else to say. This kid's an asshole.
I'll show you that there are universes out there that are fucked up.
Yep.
Yeah. Look at this altered dimension where we have dinosaurs and three-headed gophers, and yeah, you gotta be careful. There will be no room left. So I don't know. It's pretty crazy to think about. Maybe this episode will be higher than I thought.
I do want to say that the kid in this one, once again, this is in comparison to the 80s one, but the kid in this one seemed mean. He seemed just evil in this one, kind of, somewhat at least. He seemed just bad.
Yeah.
The one in the newer one, he didn't seem bad. He seemed like, oh, he's got good, but he's dealing with bad people. Because it did portray like his family or the people he had assembled as his family. They're not all really his family. They weren't very good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe he was doing bad things, but he seemed like a good kid doing bad things because he had the ability to, and they were bad people. And this one, it seems like these are good people, and he's the bad one. So it's kind of like,
True.
I don't know if that goes into the whole thing about how, hey, you raise shit kids, you end up with shit people, and that's what he's become or is becoming. I don't know, but I did notice that. You actually sympathize with the kid in the other one because his parents and this family he's put together and created is just kind of shitty.
Yeah.
They're not very good people. Like the sister, everybody's just kind of shitty. I mean, yeah, he's doing some fucked up things, but they're just shitty people. So I think that goes a long way in making you feel more for him. But that also goes into the end of the newer one where it does have a bit more hopeful ending. And the kid is, you're supposed to connect with him. And that's the whole thing with the teacher saying, hey, you guys are assholes. He's just a kid. Yeah, he's doing bad. And you need to sit the fuck down, kid. But he's not bad. This one, I don't think they could have ended it that way. Because if they had a similar thing happen where everybody else is gone and he's left with one person and he's like, oh, I want to be a good boy, you would have been like, nah, you're a fucking monster. I mean, he said it in the opening narration. This kid's a fucking monster.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think too that like you get what you give, like the reflection of the way he was, quote, raised in the 80s one kind of reflected on him as far as what he did in response to all these terrible things.
Mm-hmm.
Or the way that they were.
That's why I'm interested to watch the sequel, because I want to see. You said that Bill Mumy's in it.
Yeah, he's the dad, and his daughter is more powerful than he is.
See, I'm curious to see like how if we do or do not sympathize with him as he's gotten older. So
honestly, I don't remember. Like, I remember watching the episode at one point.
I don't think I've ever seen it actually.
I don't remember anything about the episode. Just the fact that he was in it as an adult, and you're thinking, how the hell did he make it to an adult? But anyway.
So that's season 3, episode 8. It's a Good Life. Popular episode.
A good life after all.
Anyway, so with that said, let's go ahead and head into the last portion of this episode, this podcast, which is called the Twilight Zone rankings list. Everybody loves a good ranking list, especially ours, which is perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, you're a very bad podcast.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, so all right, where do we want to put this? No, we're not doing number 3. Show up, Trip.
Number 3.
Number 72.
Number 3. I will say, like, walking into this, like, I appreciate this episode, but like with a lot of these episodes that are like, quote favorites, I think you do hold them to a little higher standard, and when you watch them you kind of go, yeah, it's good, but it doesn't live to the hype, as sometimes happens with them. But the more we've talked, the more I kind of, have changed my thoughts a little bit on it. So Nick,
Definitely
what do we
top
want to
22.
Oh yeah, without doubt. I think better than 14. I only say 14 because we were there last week.
So is this a top 10 episode to you guys?
Because of what we've talked about, I think so. And I mean, just given the history of it.
Well, no, I mean, but throwing the history out the window, I mean, do you think it's a top
No.
10 episode? The list has to be like our honest feel of this episode.
No,
like,
no, you're
not
right.
what other people say. Like that's why we don't have Time Enough It Lasted like number 2, because we don't feel that's like one of the greatest episodes of all time, like most people do. I mean,
That
it's
is
still
true.
number 17, but
Yeah, but still, it's not, number 3 or whatever.
I mean, when we go top 10, we're looking at stuff like Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up, Shadow Play, The Purple
Yeah.
Testicle, Stop at Willoughby, Walking Distance, Obsolete Man.
That's a good
Number 1,
thought.
which is Monsters Do at Maple Street.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned before that we're gonna Nightmare as a Child up this bitch, but I don't know if I can do top 10. But I don't think I don't think you want it to go, below say 15 or 16. Like
I
I'd
mean, I
put
think
it.
this is a better episode than Nick of Time. I'll give it that. But there's like a world of his own, which I don't know.
Well, and we're always going to run into one or two of those episodes, regardless of where we go with that,
Talk about this every week.
Yeah.
As long as it's per chance to dream, Jacob's all right with it.
Top 22.
Exactly. I mean, I think between 11 and 15 would be where I would kind of start. But that's me.
How about you, Nick?
I mean, fuck, I don't know. Is it better than The Silence? Is it better than The Grave?
It's better than the
God,
cornfield.
Is it better than The Rum Gone? I mean, this is where I'm looking at. I'm looking between The Grave and Nick of Time. I mean, right where Triv said, like Nightmare as a Child, Nick of Time, World, Zone, The Grave. But I don't know. Do you feel like it should be a top 10 episode, Jacob?
Yes.
Really? Interesting.
I'm not offended if it doesn't.
Well, no, but like, where would you
me,
put it? I mean, if we were to go top 10, I don't
5.
think I would go higher than Shadow Play, but number 5?
I could see putting it between or around like yeah, I was gonna say I could see putting it around like Willoughby or Testament.
But I don't know. It's weird because like I watched it, I really liked this episode. And you say, put it at the 5th highest episode ever. I'd be like,
yeah, you're talking about above Obsolete Man. That's
well, that's what I'm saying. It's like I hear that and I'm like, I don't know if I really liked it, but is it number 5? But then I look at what's around it and I'm like, I did like it. I mean, I like all these episodes, but I liked it more than A Stop at Willoughby.
Okay.
Walking Distance, I liked it. I think I liked it more than that. It's been so long since I've seen that one. That's
that was like episode 5 of the whole series.
Yeah. And that was a good episode. Obsolete Man, I mean, they're just very different episodes. I liked Obsolete Man. I just thought that explosion scene was really messy, but that aside, I think that had more that had more meat on the bones than this. So I mean, myself personally, I'd probably be like, 7, between 7 and 9, that area.
So
but I mean, like I said, if it was
Purple
around,
Testament?
I think the acting in Purple Testament takes it a long way, and like the little moments in Purple Testament are what's so great. But as far as just the story itself, I don't know, man. No.
I mean, Dan Adams does push people off a bridge in that one. So
well, it's not even just that; it's like the whole dichotomy going on, like how they more or less know they're going to their death, and they do. And but yeah, I think the Purple Testament probably had more meat on its bones too. Maybe Shadow, but probably more like a 9 or 10. See, I'm working myself up. Yeah, if it was like you guys were talking,
would you
about
put
like
this like
11 or 12
above Nightmare as a Child?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'd rather watch that than that. That's for damn
well,
sure.
Yeah, I kind of figured this.
Agreed.
I think Nightmare as a Child has more to say, but I mean, Nightmare as a Child has more to say than a lot of episodes, so I can't really totally float it on that. But I liked it more than Nick of Time. Now that one I can straight up say I liked it more than Nick of Time.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
like-
if we're going that route, I think I would put it like below Shadow Play, but above Nick of Time, somewhere in that route.
I would put Real Martian
Yeah.
above it just because personally, but that's me.
That's fine. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be in 10. This is not one I'm like, no, this has to be top 10. I was just like, and as you saw, as I sat there and talked myself out of it and worked myself way up. That's why, like number 5, I said number 5 originally, but I was like, yeah, that just doesn't sound right. So yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
fair.
I'm cool with which one did you say? Will the real more? Yeah.
I would say below for me personally. I would put it like
Below
between
is, like,
Martian
higher?
and Night. Yeah, I'd put it between Nightmare and Martian.
Oh,
So
okay.
10 and 11.
I mean that I'm a-okay with that, as long as it's under 22. And realistically, after talking, yeah, I'm in that 12 area. Right there is where I feel like this fits in there.
So between Martian and Nightmare as a Child, or between Nightmare as a Child and Nick of Time?
I go with between Nightmare and Nick of Time, but I'm not offended by one up at Real Martian and Nick of Time.
I'm good with that.
I'm good in that whole area right there. I'm not gonna like go to
Yeah.
war.
He's going
I
to war,
think-
people.
I think Nightmare and Nick is a good place for it.
Because they're all good. These are all good
What
episodes.
are you saying,
Yeah.
Triv? You say I'm a nightmare? Is
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yes.
What do you mean, you nightmares?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know where I was going with
You
that.
are the
Anyways,
determining
No
factor
idea.
here, Nick.
I mean, that's fine. Like I said, it's
Nick.
you know,
Nick,
Hello,
Nick, Nickelodeon.
yeah. I mean, it's an important episode. It's an episode that definitely tries to entertain, but also tries to be unique. And I think it almost succeeds. I think it, it's an episode that maybe it overrated slightly compared to, a lot of episodes, I guess, when it comes
Well,
to
what isn't? You know,
popularity. Yeah.
I mean, outside of the season 4 of the original Twilight Zone, what episode to some extent isn't overrated? Like that's
Right.
just something has been around for that long. It's hyped to oblivion just because it's like it's the original Twilight Zone, you know? That's just
Yeah.
part of its blessing and curse.
Right. And it doesn't take away from it not being a good episode. Just
Oh, no.
when you go into something that's so beloved, it's like any movie, TV show, a lot of people will go, "Ugh, you think that was like the greatest thing ever?" I'm like, well, yeah, to me it is, but maybe it's not you. But yeah, I think that works. So yeah, we'll put it right underneath Nightmare as a Child, above Nick of Time. Is that right? Is that what we picked? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Bow, bow, chicka, bow,
Woohoo!
bow. Okay. So with that said, yeah. So we'll do that. New number 12, It's a Good Life. Number 1, So I the Beholder. Number 73, Trouble at Templeton. We're getting into some fun territory in the next episode, which of course is season 3, episode 9, Death's Head Revisited, directed by Don Medford, written by Rod Serling. This is apparently a much better version of that U-boat episode. What's that one?
Judgment Night.
Judgment Night. Apparently, this is considered one of the great Twilight Zone episodes. That's really dark and disturbing.
Nice.
But Oscar Bareilles Jr. stars. Joseph Schildkraut is also starring. Ben Wright. People I don't know. I don't know any of these people. So we'll find out. It's supposed to be really good from right here. And yeah, that'll do it. That'll be our take on It's a Good Life. So with that said, we're gonna head out. Jacob, Trev, awesome as always. We do things, we say things, we mean all of it and everything. So if we say we hate kids, then we definitely hate kids. But
Do
not
things,
really.
we say things.
It's right. Trev, you have a theater you're getting ready to hand over to me.
No.
Before you do that, give me your wares and where you put things on that theater.
No.
So
I'd
I have the
rather
keys.
I'd rather wish it into a cornfield.
Well, for the time being, I get your theater, right?
No, you don't. You have your movie. You have your Bikini Emporium. Your Porn Emporium, and then you have your Movie Emporium.
Pleasure Emporium.
But
Whatever.
I want the World Emporium.
No, you can't have that. That's mine. Anyway, you can find me on the YouTubes out in a cornfield. New stuff is coming, so stay tuned.
Excellent.
Good.
Jacob,
Yes.
you have regular content now.
I
That
do.
content is actually quite good, but where can you find that good content?
You can find me on YouTube, Jacob Andrews Reviews, and at Retro Jake XY, where currently I am doing a five-part series on the the story of the Sega Dreamcast. And I am, as of this recording, or is this recording being released, there are 4 parts out, and the 5th and final one is coming soon. And then after that, there'll be a big one that has some differences from all the other ones, so a little bit of new stuff there. But yeah, there's that. I do movie reviews here or there as well, but yeah, check that out. I want people to check those out. They if you're close to the recording of this or the release of it, those come out on Fridays at 12 o'clock Central Time.
A good time of day.
That's right.
And a damn fine sequel, or a damn fine series you got going.
Thank you.
This is true. It is true. But yeah, my content is of course at Movie Emporium, where this video is also posted. Audio feeds, Anchor, SoundCloud, Chrome,
Cornfields,
Tree, Danger, Flux Capacitor, 1.21 gigawatts. Also iTunes and Google Play. I'm just looking at things I have in my apartment. Schindler's List, poster, cat sleeping on my recliner. That time. Yeah. So, anyways, but yeah, rate, subscribe. You know how this works. We definitely want the views and subscriptions and stuff like that. So one day we can actually get paid for this type of thing. But until then, we do it for free for you people.
We'll turn you into Jack in the Boxes if you don't.
Yeah, we'll send you the cornfield if you don't pay us. Pay us. Right. So anyways, with that said, we're gonna head out. And for myself, Jacob and Triv,
She's a cashew.
For myself, Triv, Cashew, Jacob, and his eyeball. We'll see you guys next time in the Twilight Zone. Peace out, motherfucker. Oh my god. Shoot people in the face and
yeah.
Oh man, I had I literally